Now let's move over to Zimbabwe. The government of Zimbabwe has announced that it will roll out free education starting in 2023. Learners from underprivileged communities are slated to be the first beneficiaries of this state-funded basic education program. It is reported that the program comes after an extensive 3-year study covering 20 schools, 2 in each province, and sought to classify public schools by location and learners' level of need, amongst other things. The study established costs involved.
The program is said to be funded through state grants to learning institutions that schools will receive in lieu of tuition and school development levies from parents and guardians. Of course, joining us this morning to speak on these developments in Zimbabwe is Sonke Sanda Bebe, who is, of course, a teacher and an educator. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Good to see you. It's on record that the Zimbabwean government in 2018 promised free education for all, but never delivered. How different is this new promise in 2023?
Yes, unfortunately, I have to comment while I'm here in the UK, but of course I do keep abreast with what is happening in Zimbabwe as an educator. Of course, they were promised in 2018, and that wasn't delivered. I don't know how different that will be this time around. It is really up to the Zimbabwean voters really to judge and say, okay, this time around it's going to be true. I don't know what they are going to use as a gauge for that. Because, you know, the ZANU-PF government has had so many promises in the past which have not been fulfilled at all. So really, I don't know where to place this. I do see it's a program, if it is an earnest program, which will serve a lot of people. But for us to say this will be done this time, it is very, very difficult because, you know, ZANU-PF has had a track record, a very long one, of not carrying out its promises at all. So it's, to me, it seems like just another campaign. It's really up to the Zimbabwean population to judge and say, okay, this time this is going to be true. I don't know where they are going to go with that. It's up to them, really.
I mean, you're currently in the United Kingdom, but you're very well abreast of what's going on in Zimbabwe. Take us through what the current situation is as regards education in Zimbabwe. What is currently available?
Yes, of course, the Zimbabwean government has got, you know, the government schools, whereas from the secondary education, people have to pay for them to go up to secondary education, and there is money which is being paid. There are a lot of parents who don't afford that, and most children do stay out. And sometimes the head teachers are forced to sort of have some punitive measures where they ask children to go out of the class because they've not paid their fees, which really goes against, you know, what the world will be looking for. The United Nations Charter does say every child has a right to education. But in this case, we've got so many parents because the economy in Zimbabwe is very poor. There are many people who are not working. People cannot afford to pay their fee, the children's fees. So then they have to be out of class. I remember there was a time when head teachers were asked to accept livestock as payment for fees. I don't know the feasibility of that, whether it was possible really to accept that. So we've got so many children who are missing out education, not because they don't want to be educated, but because their parents cannot afford. And in some cases, we find schools which are really dilapidated, severely dilapidated. We've got teachers who are not properly trained in some regions. We've got teachers who are deployed where they can't speak the local language. We've got teachers who are not paid enough for them to be committed to their job. They find they have to do other chores, other things for them to supplement what they get as pay. So really, it's a very difficult situation in Zimbabwe right now. Yet we were a country which was really high up in education in the 80s, but this has just dwindled away, and it's even worse now.
What would you say? I mean, a government can decide that they want to give free education to, you know, to its citizens. It's A lot of times, these are seen as political statements. But what would you say is the most important thing that the Zimbabwean government should do instead? Is free education, what is really needed, or is better funding for the current education sector in Zimbabwe more important? Do you think that they need to instead build better structures instead of making it free?
Absolutely. I do feel really when you give free education in an economy like Zimbabwe, where, even if they get that free education, who is going to provide that education in the first place? We've got a country which cannot pay its civil servants. So even if children are provided with free education, there is no personnel to carry out that education. And also infrastructurally, there isn't enough. The structure doesn't provide good education, especially in the rural areas. You find there are still children up to now, 42 years after independence, who are learning under trees. So the government really, if it were me, I would really try and facilitate an economic growth, which will then sustain the parents so that they don't need that free education. Of course, free education is fine, but at the moment, I don't think it is the most important thing. I think the most important item to tackle really for the Zimbabwean government is to make sure that they provide a system which will allow economic growth. And that economic growth will then allow every child to have education, because those who are educated, we've got so many graduates in the streets right now. So really, graduates who are selling tomatoes, graduates who are panning out gold in very dangerous places. So really, the Zimbabwean government should be looking at, attracting as much investment as possible. If it's local investment, if it's investment from Africa, so that the country grows and then it has a good economy, which will then sustain everyone, including those parents who need free education. I'm not really maybe dismissing that free education is important. But what I'm saying is that what is making the government want to provide that free education is because the country doesn't have an economy, and in the end, parents are not able to pay their fees.
Let's look at the sweet spot to this, and I'm asking because here we know that in our continent, Africa, a lot of us have been plagued with challenges in terms of our education sector as well as other sectors. But what we do find is that Africans, despite or in spite of all these challenges, go outside, they go to Europe, and they shine within the continent and outside the continent. As a teacher and an educator yourself, would you share with us, the performance rate of Zimbabweans or some success stories you might have encountered of Zimbabweans who have still, in spite of all these challenges, shone brightly within the continent as well as outside the continent?
Of course, they really, I can't enumerate all of them. As we know, Zimbabwe has so many educated people. South Africa, as it is, has got so many educated Zimbabweans who are running most of the places. Even the UK here, we've got so many Zimbabweans who are really out here, really showing their best. We've got, in Canada just recently, with one of the Zimbabweans appointed a judge there. So really, there are so many to enumerate. And I would really take myself personally. I've got a family, I've got children who've come out here. I brought my children over. One of my children is a lawyer in Australia. So really, it shows that Zimbabweans are very keen when it comes to education. And once they are given that, they use it very, very well. But it's unfortunate for the Zimbabwean government that all this resource, the personal resource which is available for it, the Zimbabwean government is not able to use it at the moment. And it is only until we've got maybe a government which is really free and willing to, provide people with what they need, that is maybe politically, socially, and everything, and maybe stop also its dictatorship, which really is what is chasing people away. then all those personnel resources will be able to come back home and develop the country.
We're such a rich continent full of really smart people, and we do hope that our leaders realize that the greatest gift that we have as a people is our humans. The human capital development should be something that we will explore. Thank you very much, Tonke Senda, for joining us this morning. Do enjoy the rest of your day and have a wonderful
Thank you
week
so
ahead.
much.